No one warned them. Not the settlers who built their homes on the edge of Comanche territory, not the fathers who kissed their daughters goodnight, not the mothers who believed the walls of their cabins meant safety. One morning, everything was normal. By noon, it was gone. For over 100 years across the Texas frontier, Comanche raiders struck with a speed that left no time for escape. And the women they took entered a world that had no mercy, no familiarity, and no path back to who they once were. What happened to them inside that world is something history books mention in a single paragraph. The year was 1836. The Texas frontier was not a place for the fragile. It was raw land, wide, unforgiving, and sitting directly on the edge of Comanche territory. Settlers came anyway. They built small cabins, planted crops, and told themselves that distance meant safety. It didn't. Cynthia Ann Parker was 9 years old when her world ended. She lived at Parker's Fort, a small, tight-knit settlement in what is now east-central Texas. Her family was pioneers in the truest sense. They had built something from nothing, surrounded by land they barely understood, and a people they understood even less. On the morning of May 19th, a large Comanche raiding party approached the fort under what appeared to be a flag of peace. The gates opened. Within minutes, the ground ran red. Men were killed. Women were taken. Children vanished into the plains as if he had never existed. Cynthia Ann was among them. She was small, blonde, and terrified, pulled onto a horse and carried into a world that operated by rules no settler child could have ever prepared for. What followed wasn't just captivity. It was a process, one the Comanche had refined over generations, that targeted the mind as much as the body. And for Cynthia Ann Parker, it would work in ways that shocked an entire nation. But before the world found out what became of her, she had to survive what came first. Deserves far more than that. The first days were the worst. Cynthia Ann was dragged across hundreds of miles of open plains. No landmarks, no familiar sounds, nothing that connected her to the life she had known. The Comanche moved fast, and they moved far. That was the point. Distance was the first weapon. But here is what most people don't know. The Comanche didn't treat all captives the same way. There was a system. Children were considered the most valuable, not for labor, not for ransom, for transformation. Young captives were assigned to women within the tribe who would begin the process of replacement, a new name, a new language, new skills, a new identity. The old self wasn't beaten out. It was slowly starved out until the child stopped reaching for it, and it worked. Far more often than history admits. By the time Cynthia Ann was 12, she was speaking Comanche. By 14, she had stopped looking toward the horizon for rescue. But then something happened that no one expected. A Texas Ranger patrol spotted a blue-eyed woman living among a Comanche band in 1851. They tried to approach her. She ran. She didn't run from the Comanche. She ran from them. That single moment reframed everything, because it meant the question was no longer what had been done to Cynthia Ann Parker. The question became something far more disturbing. What had she become? In December 1860, Texas Rangers hit a Comanche camp on the Pease River. It wasn't a negotiation, it was a raid. In the chaos, smoke, screaming, horses scattering in every direction, a ranger named Sol Ross noticed a woman clutching an infant, her face streaked with dust and fear. He expected resistance. What stopped him was her eyes. Blue, unmistakably blue. She was brought in. And when someone spoke her birth name, Cynthia Ann, something cracked open in her face. Not relief, not joy. Something closer to pain. She had a Comanche husband. 2 sons are still out on the plains, a daughter in her arms, a life built over 24 years, ripped away in a single morning, the same way her first life had been. The settlers called it a rescue. Cynthia Ann Parker called it nothing. She stopped speaking almost entirely. She tried to escape 3 times in the first year back in white society. 3 times she was brought back. The world that celebrated her return never once asked what she had lost in it. She stopped eating. She grieved in a way that had no name in English. Her daughter died of fever. And after that, Cynthia Ann simply had nothing left to hold on to. The woman the Texas frontier called a symbol of survival was dying from the inside. And the cruelest part? The Comanche life she was taken from at 9, she had chosen at 20. No one thought that was worth saving. Cynthia Ann Parker died in 1871. No dramatic final moment, no peace. She faded, a woman who had lived fully in 2 worlds and been destroyed by both. Her son, Quanah Parker, survived. He became one of the most powerful Comanche leaders in history, and later, one of the few native leaders to successfully navigate life after the reservation era. He never forgot his mother. He had her reburied near him when he died in 1911. That small act carries more weight than any history book gives it credit for, because here is what this story is truly about. It was never just about captivity. It was about identity. How fragile it is, how it can be taken, rebuilt, taken again. Cynthia Ann didn't lose herself once. She lost herself twice. And the second time, no one even recognized it as a loss. The settlers saw a woman being rescued. They never saw a woman erased. Again. We talk about the brutality of Comanche raids, and that brutality was real. But the deeper discomfort, the part history tends to avoid, is that the world that rescued her was no less capable of erasure. It just used different tools. Grief, isolation, shame, expectation. So the question worth sitting with isn't what the Comanche did to Cynthia Ann Parker. It's what every world she ever lived in decided she was worth, and what they were willing to take from her to prove it. Some captivities don't require chains.